So hi
Yeah.
everybody, my name is Carrie Dorsky. I am the NWTC Artisan and Business Center's Operations Coordinator. That is kind of a mouthful. What that means is I schedule all of our programming and all the behind the scenes stuff, but then I also run our business and entrepreneurship programming. So I run our residency program, as some of you know, and then I also run this business focused speaker series called An Artist's Journey. I inherited this series when I started in this role, and it was in person. And now, during the pandemic and post pandemic, we've kept it virtual because we have found that artists love to watch these when they're doing other things, when they're in their studios, when they're working, maybe in the middle of the night. And so we found some great success, and we have found that we reach people even outside of our state, which is really cool. It's a way we've never thought we could have reached people in our own brick and mortar. So this series kicks off in September every year. This is the first one of the season. And I try to split up the topics by featuring artists, kind of covering business topics, and then also covering relevant cultural organizations or nonprofits or businesses in our area that serve artists or could be served by artists. So um, I really love this, and I'm glad that you guys are here. And I was telling Kat when we prepared that it often feels like after it that we just hung out and had coffee and chatted about topics I'm really passionate about. So I'm going to try really hard to not sound like a talk show host. Um, that has become my thing with this series. Is I'm like, I feel like I'm doing interviews or like I'm Oprah or whoever it
Yeah.
is, talk show host. Um, so that is me. That is Artist Journey, and I am going to turn it over to Kat. But can I first say I am so excited that Kat is here. Kat and I met each other a few years ago. Actually, I have your book
Mhm.
right behind me on my shelf right here. You can see it.
Aw.
Keep it close by.
Hey.
Somebody that used to work here gave me this book that Kat wrote when they went to Art in the Park in Appleton and brought it back to me. And I fell in love with this. And I immediately said, who is this person? I'm going to find this person. I did. And I sent Kat an email and said, can we please get coffee? Can we chat? Something. And so for the past, I don't know, 3, 4 years now, Kat
Mhm.
has been a major mentor in our residency program. And I'm always so impressed with the presentations she gives and the wisdom she shares with us that I asked her to do this topic with us for Artist Journey for the public today. So, Kat, I'm going to let you introduce yourself. I think that's all I need to say for right now.
Okay. Well, I just want to say that I was so excited when Carrie asked me to do this topic because I think it's so relevant for so many of us artists. But before I get into that, I'll just give a quick rundown of who I am as a professional artist and entrepreneur. I've been in the creative industry my entire career after graduating from college several decades ago. We'll just leave it at that. And I've been in graphic design. I've been an art director for an ad agency. I've done photo styling. Um, and I started freelancing when I was about 28, and pretty much have been on my own ever since, either as a business consultant or a business owner. I had an art studio that it was acquired by a larger print organization probably about 8 years ago. And it was really primarily focused on laser cutting. This is an example of one of the pieces that we did. And there's very high-end wedding and events. I did a piece for the Grammys, but our customer base was all over the world. So it was really great to have that business. It was a great experience. It was so much fun sharing my artwork with customers. I learned a lot dealing with customers all over, different cultures and everything. But I was also really happy when it was acquired, because then I could take a break from being a business owner. And I segued a little bit to help my husband start his businesses, which were in the home improvement industry, kind of a separate area. And we grew those up, and those have sold. And it allowed me to get back to my first love, which is creating artwork, but also my passion of sharing my wisdom in how to build a business in art, and so I love sharing what I've learned, and also just talking to others, things that they've learned that works with them. So super happy to be here. So, so Carrie asked if I would give this talk about finding your voice and sharing your story as an artist. And I love those topic ideas because I think they're so relevant, that artists have a dichotomy. They struggle with two things. On one hand, we inherently want to express ourselves through our art, but then we also have, probably equally as strong, some shyness and some apprehension about sharing ourselves. So it's learning how to be okay in that two different areas of our personality. And so I want to open up the conversation. You are all very welcome to participate in anything that Carrie and I are discussing. But I wanna talk about how to get to a point where you feel good about being your authentic self, especially through your artwork. So the first thing is probably a topic we need to talk about is, like, why is it important to be authentic? Well, because most artists, and for those of you who I can see your hands, raise your hands if this resonates with you. Have you ever, or do you still fret about being good enough? I think it's so common. I think every single artist that I know at some point in time kind of worries, like, am what I'm doing going to be good enough? And I'm here to tell you that there is room for everyone. There is room for every style out there. That finding your point of view is probably the most important thing. And yet most of us probably spend most of our time trying to develop our craft, which is also important. But finding a way to authentically express your point of view is of equal importance, because you want to create in a way in which your customer base can start to kind of know what you're about, know what to expect when they are looking at your artwork. And so how do you do that? And part of that is creating your own personal brand, or at least thinking of yourself as a brand. Does that resonate with any of you, that whole idea of creating a brand? It's kind of like, okay, this is probably a really bad example, but I'm just going to use it because it's like almost dinner time, so I'm kind of getting hungry. Like, okay, like you go to McDonald's and your favorite thing there is a quarter pounder with cheese. And you know, if you're in Wisconsin or you're on the East Coast or the West Coast, anywhere you go and get a quarter pounder with cheese, it's gonna be the same thing. But McDonald's and companies like that, you can insert any favorite brand of yours. They get really good at understanding what their brand promise is and then executing to it. So as artists, especially as professional artists, we have to work on that. We have to figure out, well, what is our personal brand? And it is very much a very natural extension of who you are already. Okay, that's the good news. So it's not like you have to generate something that's beyond you. What I want to see you do is allow your natural inspiration, which is a word taken from in spirit. So your natural soulful desire to create artwork, and allow the world to see that. And if you do that, you're going to find your personal brand. So how do you do that? Well, it's developing a point of view. And Christine, I would love for you to participate in this, because this is an artist, and actually I didn't tell you this before you came on here, but I have you in my talk here. I'm going to use you as an example, because you have a fabulous point of view. Your art, since when you joined, she was a cohort from the Artisan Center, and since you joined, you have a very distinct look to your artwork. It's got a fantastic vibe. And like, how did you did you just naturally find that, or did it take a while for you to nurture that?
I don't even know how to answer that. Like, I guess I just keep doing me. I really enjoy fantasy, and I do so many shows now that I kind of just feed off of what people say and what people like, and they'll comment on certain styles within my paintings that they really like, and it comes to mind when I'm creating. So I kind of try to keep those comments in mind whenever I'm working, and it's grown to what it is, I guess.
Yeah, I think so. If you're just starting out with artwork too, and you want to get to a place where Christine has a very distinct style, and people come to find her work, they collect it. Is the way you can start that is think about, I mean, like, what do you care about? Like she mentioned, like fantasy is important to her. And so it's finding the things that you are extremely interested in, or what's your opinion? Like, what do you like to think about? And then do that. That becomes your point of view.
I'm going to interject too. I think that I made some notes on the notes you gave me, and I wrote down something like, and Christine does this really well, a little bit of consistency, right? A little bit of, even if you tackle a different topic or a different genre, I can still tell that it's Christine. And I think that's one of the things that really does make for a successful artist, is if I'm walking into a gallery or a museum and I immediately recognize whose work that is, that to me is somebody who has developed their style, their voice, and knows who they are as an artist.
Yeah, now I'm going to try to share my screen, and I hope I do this correctly. So just give me a moment if this doesn't go through right.
We'll figure it out.
There we go. Okay. Do you guys see a screen of some very famous paintings?
Yep,
who we probably all just know who they are just by looking at them, right? So you have Van Gogh, and you have Frida Kahlo, and does anyone know who the other one is over there? Hi, Carly. It's Picasso. So they have all a very distinct style. As soon as you see them, you know who they are. And I just want to point out something, because I really do believe a lot of artists fret about being good enough. And if you look at these three very distinct styles, they're not trying to all be the same. And I think that's really super important. And then here's three more. Okay, so the first one is Mary Engelbreit. And then the one in the middle is, does anyone know who he is? Because I'm probably going to slaughter his name, so I was hoping somebody else would pronounce it right. It's Jean-Michel Basquiat. How do you say it? Basquiat?
Yep.
Yes, yes. And then the last one is one of my favorite artists. He's like one of my mentors, although he doesn't know it, and his name is Olaf Hayek. And the other connector of all six artists that I just showed you is they're professional. I mean, some of them are past, but they are all professional artists, and they're all painting the human form. But you can see like the variety of styles, and none of them are probably worrying too much about that they're good enough at this point. They're just so into their style, and they're so into their love of the art, and that's what we resonate with. So that's one thing that I really want us to keep in mind when we're creating our style. Is Lila Rogers is an agent who also does some classes, and the name of her classes is Make Art That Sells. And one of the best things that I ever heard her say is that people buy your love. And what she meant by that is, if you are fully invested in the love of creating art, that it shows, that your artwork feels it, and as a result, people will resonate with it and connect with it. So I'm going to stop sharing now. Did that stop sharing? No, it did. So we're back to that. Okay. Technology. So anyway, so I mean, that's the first thing I really want to make a point on, is that when you're creating your point of view, don't really worry about what everyone else is doing. Like, of course, we all kind of look and compare, and you want to spend some time. Like I said, I have artists that are my mentors because I want to see how they've done what they've done. So I will look to them, but there's always a risk of getting caught into comparison, where that can kind of start to make you feel bad. And so the other point is, we are all very unique people, right? So don't let comparing yourself to somebody else get in your head. You know, you really want to stay inspired in your spirit and create from yourself, even when you're kind of learning from others that might be doing things that you would really like to do. So the other thing I want to talk about now too is, I want to talk about if you have trouble finding your point of view, okay? And many of us struggle with this, and that's part of the purpose of this talk, is let's first try to understand like why we struggle with it, like what suppresses our voice. And so there's this thing called, I like to call it domestication. You know, you take a wild little soul, a little kid, right? And we start the domestication process when they enter into school. And we make them sit down and be quiet and perform on demand. And they end up having to do that for like 8 hours a day for the next 12 years. You know, we domesticate the wildness and the imagination out of kids. And then, you know, there's also this thing right around puberty, right? When all of a sudden we become really like self-conscious of ourselves, and our peers become a huge influence, and we become overly concerned with fitting in. It's another reason why we suppress our creativity or our uniqueness as artists, because it's no longer really welcomed in society. And then you also have some of us were lucky to grow up in households that welcomed our creativity, but most of us and many of us did not. It wasn't maybe necessarily valued. And maybe we were encouraged to do things that are like safer, you know, get a safe career, pick a safe lifestyle, a safe spouse. And I used to kind of rail against that whole idea because I was certainly raised that way. But I've learned, especially since becoming a mother myself, and understanding there's such a deep concern to keep my kids safe, that I have more compassion for my own parents who really stress this idea about, you know, being safe, be logical and rational, and don't chase after so much of that creative energy. However, as artists, that's counterintuitive to what we want to be, and how we need to step out of our comfort zone in order to really connect with our customer base. So we've got to figure out a way around that. But the other thing I want to mention about how it happens and why it happens is something that I call the decommissioning. And it ties into that whole idea of safety and society, where we are told in society, and so I think we have all women here, which is kind of good, because I don't mean this to be a negative towards men, but we live in a patriarchal society. And as women, we're told that our opinions don't matter and that they have no value. And standing in our creative space isn't necessarily a safe space. And because of it, we can kind of struggle with our creative voice. But the idea is, if we can understand how it happened, then we can understand how to work around it. I mean, I think the most important thing is to realize that we're not alone as artists, that somebody else doesn't have the magic key. And I have, you know, kind of like a little secret message for all of us here, is that here's the thing, you guys, nobody knows what they're doing, okay? Nobody does. Nobody knows what the future is. Some people are just better at pretending that they know. So don't feel bad if you're like, just going to put this stuff out there and see what happens. Okay. That is part of the process. And you kind of have to get comfortable with the idea that sometimes they receive it well and sometimes they don't. And there's some other techniques, and Christine kind of referred to it before, of how she finds out what people are resonating with her artwork. And I'll talk a little bit more about that going forward on that. But the point is, we're all unique and we all have a voice and we all have a place within the artistic industry. All we have to do is claim it. So the problem with saying, you know what, I'm not comfortable standing out or taking risks. I just want to blend in. I want to be an artist and be eye-catching and memorable, but I just want to blend in. It doesn't work that way. You have to have a unique point of difference in order to be memorable. And I put it really, really super simple. You can't stand out when you blend in. You just can't be both.
I made a note on that point, and as I was reading through your notes and after our conversation, I made a point here too about doing what you think is popular or trendy at the time.
Yep.
I was recently at an art show and I walked in the door and I felt like I had time warped to 20 years ago. All of the art that was being created was like what was super popular.
Yeah. You know, and it's a tricky thing because on one hand, if your goal is to say, I want to sell a lot of art, I want to be in the mainstream art world. Well, you got to look and see what's selling. And you can kind of process through it and say, okay, well, can I make my style kind of fit into what is selling? It's kind of part of being a professional artist. But if you do that, I want you to do that with full intention of knowing the how and the why, you know, and is it going to feed your soul long term? And I don't necessarily have any answers for you on that, except for what I want to talk about is really just finding your authentic voice and filtering everything through your authenticity. And from there, it will help a little bit. But it is hard, to Carrie's point, that when you're an artist and you're trying to figure out your customer base and you walk in, you see crowds of people in somebody's booth selling something that you're like, really? So it's part of the game. But to get back to the point of decommissioning, if that's something that really resonates with you guys, I want to show you something. I got to share my screen again. So. I'll get better at this as we go, I promise.
I picture you with like 6 monitors in front of you and you're trying to choose the show.
Just 2. Okay, so this is a book I'm reading and I'm almost done with it. Let's see if I can get this. There we go. On Our Best Behavior. It's a really interesting book. It's a good read if you want to understand how it happened that women pay the price for having to fit into society. And this is one of the charts. I took a picture of it that's from the book that I found really encouraging. So, you know, 30,000 years ago, we were in the matriarchal society where nature was super powerful and women were more kind of like the leaders because we did this magical thing. We gave birth to humans. And so, you know, there was the goddess idea that, you know, that was really worshipped. And then about 4,500 years ago, we went into this patriarchal kind of society where it's more about the male, which is, you know, power against nature, that we had to take over nature and we had to suppress anyone who had any different opinions than us. And I think that's where a lot of us struggle with if you were raised in a certain strong religious belief or all these other things that try to control and tamp down the creative energy, which is kind of a more on the feminine side of things. But now what they're saying, and I find this very encouraging, is that we're moving towards more of an androgynous kind of way of looking at things. And I am so excited to see like millennials are much better at accepting who they are. And I'm very excited to see where we're going to go with this idea that, you know, both energies, male and female, is equally powerful, and it's about interdependence and working with nature, not against it. So I just want to say that this might be our opportunity as artists, where we get to express ourselves, and it's easier to be accepted now than it was even, say, 10 or 20 years ago. So it's all a good thing. And so I just want to say that as like something encouraging to keep in mind. Now what I want to do is quickly, I want to show 3 cohorts who I think have had a really strong point of view, and they have done such a fantastic job of staying true to who they are, and they're such a successful artists, and I'm so excited to watch all of these. And the first one is Miwa Ceramics. And was she in, Carrie, was that last year or the year before? Is that 2 years ago?
Yeah, yep.
She has just blown up. She sells a lot of her stuff in Door County, and she has stayed true. Like that picture I have there of her, those cups, she was doing that when she started cohorts, and it's just amazing. She is just so cool and stayed so consistent to who she truly was. The next one is Tanya, and I love her style, and I can't wait to see what she does with this. But again, all of her artwork has this very vibrant look. She makes some really strong points with her artwork, and she's always had this vibe about her, and she stayed true to it, didn't let it dissipate at all throughout the years. And the next one is Christine, and she has this cool style about her. That one on the left, guys, she was, how many 36 paintings?
Yeah,
well, so 36, right? I kind of cut out, at least on my end.
Yeah.
And she sold to one person, one organization, which I just think is phenomenal. But it's about finding, yes, they all found their style, and despite the urge to say, well, maybe I should try to be more like so-and-so, you know, they instead said, no, I'm going to just stay who I am, and find ways to love intrinsically who I am. You know, it's about just being you. So I really want to encourage you guys to really continue to focus on just being who you are. So I want to talk next about, okay, well, how do you find your authentic voice? Again, if you ever found it. But the thing that I want to encourage all of you to do is do journaling. And I talk about this in my mentoring a lot. Your journal should be a sacred practice. Don't share your journal with anybody. And I'm going to give you 4 journal prompts that you can use to help you find your authentic voice. And the first one is, I want to ask you, what did you used to do when you were a little kid, when nobody was paying attention, you were just playing? Journal back into what it is that you found really inspiring and fun to work on. Okay, so that's the first journal prompt. The second one is, currently, what do you think about when you are free to do whatever you want to do? Where does your interest go? What do you like to do as hobbies, or where do you just find your mind wandering to? The third prompt is, if money was not an issue, what would you do? How would you spend your time? And then the last one's kind of probably the most difficult for most people, because it's a big question. And that is, what do you want your legacy to be? That when you leave this planet, what do you want people to remember about you? If you can journal on those 4 questions, you're going to find some interesting answers in there. So what you want to find is what I call authentic purpose. If you find your authentic purpose, that becomes this filter by which you can filter all, oh, maybe I should work on this, maybe I should sell into this market. You can filter that all through your authentic purpose, and it'll help you determine if it's something that really feels true to you. So authentic purpose is a unique configuration of your interests, your talents, your ambitions and goals. And it's when you're participating in your unique set of interests that you feel like you're on purpose and that you're manifesting your true self. And if you work from that point, you will create a very unique place within the art world. And I'm going to show you how to do that really quick. I see time is flying by, so I'll share my screen really quick. This is a handy little chart. Okay, it's called the fabric of authentic purpose. And in the center, you're going to see that there's a heart, right? And there is 4 squares around the heart. In those 4 squares around the heart, I want you to write in your favorite things that you love to think about, talk about, do. And then all the other squares around there, I want you to fill in all the other things that you like to do that maybe aren't as close to your heart center, but are still things that you spend time doing. And then when you look at that, I want you to start to see connections. Say, oh, I can see how that relates to that, and that relates to that. And through that, I can find a unique configuration of my unique purpose in life. And I just filled it in here to give you an example of how I filled this in for myself. So there's art, there's metaphysics or law of attraction. If you know me, I talk a lot about that. Goal achievement and writing stories. That's really my heart center. When I'm working in that area, in those 4 quadrants, I know I'm in my purpose. So presenting isn't in one of my heart-centered quadrants. However, it's closely related. So I know when I'm given an opportunity, like Carrie gives me to present to you, where I can share the things that are in my heart center, I know that this is in my purpose, and I must say yes, because it is my purpose to do so. So that's how you can kind of find your unique configuration of this. And I'm telling you, there are a million different ways in which you can express your art. And by when you look at this and see, okay, maybe I'm really into, I don't know, rescuing animals. So maybe your artwork becomes about animals. You see, that can become then, you know, you're in your purpose and you are loving your artwork because it's really close to your, because what you're really interested in. So that's how you can kind of find your authentic purpose. And again, it just goes back down to really knowing what your goals are. And the other thing I want to talk about is creating a lot of artwork. Like, create a ton of artwork, and don't be concerned if you think some of it's ugly. Create a lot of ugly artwork, because every professional artist has stacks of art that they either say are disasters or they say they're not done yet, right? That's the other secret word that you can say, it's just not done yet. And there's just one thing too, where you got to kind of work through the discomfort. There's like the 75% mark. Like when I get some artwork done, it's like 3/4 of the way done and I start to hit a wall. Can you guys relate to that? Where you're like, ugh, I can't get this. It doesn't work out. I hate it. I suck. This is horrible. But promise you, if you can work through that discomfort, you can find some magical stuff that comes through it as a result of working through the discomfort. So that would be the other thing I'd want to talk about, is just make sure that you keep working through your art and create a lot. And there's other thing that I talk about is that, you know, struggle is really an artist's middle name. So you're going to struggle, and that's okay. And just keep working through it and honor your uniqueness, because that's what you're here to do. That is part of your purpose, is to share your uniqueness. So just keep leaning on that. It's okay to make mistakes too along the way. You know, I've made every mistake you could possibly think of, including, and I talk about this in my book, going to my first really big show, spending a lot of money creating all this art and this booth. And I forgot something really important. I didn't have any way to make a sale. How stupid. I forgot, you know, you have to have, like, you know, credit card stuff. And it was a big mistake because I was so concerned about everything else that I kind of didn't think everything through. You're going to make mistakes and you're going to have blunders, but you learn from them, right? So you just keep on keeping on, and you get better with practice. That's the other concept that I'd like to talk about a lot, about nurturing your point of view, is this idea of practice. If you look at your artistic expression as a practice, practice means a lot of things. Like, practice means, hey, I am working on getting better. I am trying to perfect my craft. So I'm just practicing it. That takes the pressure off of making sure that every piece of artwork that you're creating is perfect. It doesn't have to be perfect. You're just practicing. The other reason why I like the word practice is practice means it's something that I do. It's part of my, if not daily ritual, my weekly ritual. And it's something that I'm going to do for the rest of my life, right? It's a practice that I do that is part of me. It's part of my rituals. That way your art can always grow and evolve and become something different. You can grow and change as an artist. That when it's just, it's your practice, that then it takes that pressure off of thinking everything has to be production perfect. The reason I like the word practice too, it's like, okay, like if you want to get really good at something, say for example, you want to become a tennis pro, you wouldn't expect that you're going to go step on the court, pick up a tennis racket and hit the ball perfectly like an expert. You would say, yikes, I guess I need to either take some lessons or I need to practice a lot. The same thing applies to your artwork. You can't expect yourself to be perfect from the get-go on your art, especially if you're kind of new to this idea of wanting to make it your profession. So you're going to have to practice a lot. Yeah, and you got to keep practicing. Every professional artist I know practices their art a lot. It is a ritual that they just do. And as a result, they have a collection of artwork that they can bring up and sell because they just look at it as a continual process that they're doing. So I want to share something now too. So there is a parable out there, and it's something about two blind men. One is standing in the front of an elephant, and the other one is standing in the back of it. And they're both trying to describe what it is that they're experiencing. And they're having two very different experiences. And this cartoon here is kind of, I think, a riff off of that parable. But you can see each one of these people standing by this elephant has a very different, unique point of view. And as artists, that's the same thing. We all have a very unique point of view. And we need to celebrate that, not suppress it by feeling like we have to fit into a trend or we have to look like everybody else in order to be good. And to showcase this idea that everyone is unique and is going to have a different point of view, I have a homework assignment that I hope you guys all participate in. And if you do this homework assignment, I really hope that you would upload it to Facebook, right, Carrie?
When we share the recording, we were talking about if you post it in the Facebook comments on the recording.
Yes, in the Facebook comments. And I will share my interpretation. I'm going to show you a picture now as inspiration. And I just want all of you to create your own rendition and upload it into the comments of Facebook. And I think it's going to show everybody just how varied and unique we all have in our artistic expression. That's going to be just kind of fun to watch. Okay, so that's that. Okay, so we have about 20 minutes left. So I thought the remaining part of time we can talk about sharing your story and how to do that. And why you should do that, first of all, and then some parameters around it. So I mentioned this before, that there is this concept that you want people to be able to connect to your art. You know, they want to buy what you love and they want to connect with you. People who appreciate artists, usually the artwork is tapping in or resonating with them on some level, right? So your customers will resonate with what it is that you're creating in your artwork. So, and some of that's poignancy, some of that's sharing some of what went into the artwork. Some of it might be your backstory, you know, the struggles you went through as a human being to become an artist. And that's all really good. And it's all part of being an artist. You want to give them reasons to fall in love with your artwork. And sometimes that is sharing some of the struggles that you went through, because that will draw them in and make them appreciate your artwork even more. But I would caution people that you got to be careful with how much you share. And especially in the current environment that we're in with social media and reality TV, where oversharing has become so commonplace. But I have watched other artists through the years expose too much of themselves in their social media, and they burn out, or they say inappropriate things. And, you know, there's a cancel culture out there. And so, you know, I once shared a piece of artwork that I thought was just very non-political, but it was during a political season. And in one fell swoop, just posting that one piece of art, I lost 400 followers. Now, I don't regret it because I didn't see anything wrong with it, but people are very quick to cancel. So I caution people, and I want to talk about that when you share your story about how to do it in a way that you're still, you don't have regrets about what you're sharing with people. So the rest of this conversation is going to be what to leave in about your life story and what to leave out. And the first thing I want to say is your life story, what happened to you, is yours and yours alone. No one has a right to it. Along the same lines, you don't have right to anybody else's life or outing anybody else when you're sharing your life story. And those are two of the landmines that I think sometimes people step on when they're sharing their life story, or getting a little too carried away and sharing too much. So always ask yourself when you're thinking about sharing parts of your life is, how will this information enhance or detract from my personal brand? Okay, and I have a case study. Again, I'm going to share the screen real quick. I'm getting faster.
While you're doing that, I'm just going to say I wrote down a note of, like, I have noticed a lot of people who are social media people and do that for a living. When they burn out, they talk about feeling like the public has access to all of them. And when you let that many people into your life and you share, let's say daily or constantly, and then the public starts to feel like they have access to you, that Absolutely. Can be really, I don't know, unnerving maybe.
So I share that in that book, How to Be a Professional Artist, and I also have it on a blog on my website. It's the social media monster. And think of it as like this angry monster who is insatiable. And as soon as you create something, it devours it. And it's off looking for something else to devour. So if you get too caught up in this creator mindset, and I don't know who these experts who say you have to share like 3 times a day in order to build your social media following. That is not true, especially when you're an individual. And don't confuse the fact that you are a creative to being a creator. That's 2 very different things. And the most important thing with social media as you're building your following is to be consistent. And if that means you only post once a week, so be it. And I say protect your personal boundaries at all costs and protect your energy as an artist. It's very vital. Please write that down and make it a sign, you know, protect your energy, because it's very easy for us to lose sight of that when we're trying to build our business. But I want to share a case study.
So you know that you've got us shared on our camera, so I think you clicked the wrong monitor.
Oops. LOL. Okay, thank you for telling me that.
Absolutely.
Let's see if I can do this again.
Here you go. That's you now.
Okay.
I always say, well, you're doing that, I'll keep rambling. I always say the health boundaries
you see it now?
And yep, perfect. Okay. And it's okay to say no to people. That's one of my things.
Yes, learning how to say no so you have time to say yes to the right stuff. Anyway, Frida Kahlo, I mentioned her before. She had a very painful life, and I'm not even showing some of the more gorier pieces of artwork that she had, but people connect with her, and she is a legend. If you know, I think most everybody knows who she is. She shared a lot. It's like basically her diary out loud. And she had a very rough life. She spent a lot of it in bed. So a lot of her artwork was self-portraits. So we learned a lot about her. We learned, you know, she had this horrible miscarriage. She had this problem marriage. It was very tumultuous. And she had all these health problems, and she documented it in her artwork. And because of it, I think we all fell in love with her, and she's a legend. I want to contrast that to a guilty pleasure of mine, which is, and this is kind of tongue in cheek, but to the point, the Real Housewives. Okay, so they're kind of fun to watch, but they're kind of all train wrecks in the making, right? Like they get so caught up into the ego of what they're doing and what they're saying, and they get into really exposing parts of themselves that that do we really need to know about? And some of them have gotten, you know, there's 2 of them I have on there that have spent time in prison. One has 6.5 years, I think, that she's going to be in prison because she divulged way too much of her life, and as a result, you know, some bad consequences. A lot of them have had divorces and other catastrophes happen as a result of sharing too much. So there is always this pressure in this current environment, the social media thing of sharing too much. So think about what it is that you want to share. How does it enhance or detract from your personal brand? And know that you always have the right to protect your energy. And I'll make these available on my website. But here's something else you all have. And I think some of you might have one of these. This is your very own creative license. This means you have the right to be who you are. You have the right to share who you are. You have the right to protect who you are and to create healthy boundaries around yourself. Okay, so always remember you have a certified license, and if you want a copy of this, I'll make it available as a download on my website. So the idea again is really to understand what your goals are in sharing your backstory. What does it do? And a good way of doing this is journaling, and really getting to know yourself. And the other thing that I want to talk about is when you're creating artwork, your authenticity is your superpower. So learning how to share the appropriate authentic parts of you, letting and releasing some of your personal backstory out so people have some relevance as to who you are and why you are is good. But knowing what other parts that is not open for anybody. Okay, so that's, you know, your authenticity is your superpower. Vulnerability is a strength. So exposing some of your backstory, like Frida Kahlo did, also helps people connect to you. And I have another, I love books, and here's another one that I would really recommend, My Friend Fear. This was written by Meera Lee Patel. And she has just really, really cute books. They're very like artsy. But again, you know what I was saying, you know, we all worry about having like really good art. I highly respect her, but her art is not super high end. And yet she is a best-selling author. And, you know, so her artwork is just kind of very simple, but it's very poignant. And she shares a lot in her books about her vulnerability as an artist. And as a result, I mean, like I said, she's a best-selling author. And, you know, she connects. She's had her series of cards in Target, and some other really cool stuff has happened for her because she's allowed herself to learn how to share her vulnerability in a way in which she still feels strong about it. So hopefully that resonates with you guys, and that makes sense in terms of like how to share your story. The other idea I want to talk about is just accepting yourself on your journey. That the artistic mindset is one where we very often are overly sensitive or overly shut down. That's part of the creative mindset. And working through that is part of your journey and part of the process. But, you know, if we wanted an ordinary life, it would be much easier, but we don't. We want to be an extraordinary human being, being an artist. So that's part of the game that we have to play. So, you know, we talked about social media a little bit, like and Christine mentioned this too, this is another way to kind of build your authenticity, is find out what your customers are saying about your artwork. And I always use my social media as a way of getting, finding out like how people are connecting to my art. And so you can always like ask questions like, what does this art mean to you? Or, hey, here's 2 pieces of art, which one do you prefer? Those are all ways in which you can get engagement from your followers, and they'll start to tell you what kind of artwork they want to see more of. During 2020, I asked them all to just send me affirmations that were helping them to keep going during the pandemic, and I created a series of artwork from that. And it was really insightful to see what it is that my followers were asking for more art. So think about your social media, or when you are in a booth, trying to engage with customers and talk to them. And part of what you're going to be finding and discerning is which pieces of artwork that they find that they're relating to, and then find out why. And very often, Christine, you can probably answer this, like, how do you get people to engage in your artwork or tell you which pieces they like? How do you go about picking that information from them?
It's usually their facial expression when they walk into my booth. Somebody always either cracks a smile or drops their jaw, and they find a piece that just relates with them, and then I just kind of start the conversation at that, you know. You just be able to read their face and spark up the conversation.
Yeah, find that opportunity when somebody is resonating, and then, yeah, just asking them what it is that they're loving. And from there, you will learn a lot about how your artwork is perceived by other people. So I think we have, what, about 8 more minutes? Okay, I have one more topic to cover really quick. Okay. And that is when you're working on your personal brand, I want you to kind of think about, go through the exercise of creating a tagline. Okay, so a tagline kind of wraps up everything that you want your art to be about. And so think about, here, I'll show you some samples. I'll share my screen one more time with you, and I'll show you some samples of how I do it. Okay, first I have to just show the Real Housewives. You know, they have all their own taglines, right? Life is short. I have no time for drama. Yes, you do. You're on The Real Housewives. Anyway, those are taglines, right? And it's kind of wrapping up their personal brand, what their brand promises on their shows. But more seriously, here are some. I pulled this off of artbusinessnews.com of artists who have created their own taglines. And you can kind of see from these examples how they have woven words to describe who they are and giving it some relevance so people can kind of understand what they're about and what to expect when they look at their artwork. I'll show you some examples of taglines that I use currently. So I use art and inspiration to talk about, you know, I do art, but I also like to talk about all this stuff that I'm talking about to help people be inspired to be their most authentic self. And so this other piece is The Art and Soul of Gottlieb. That's the front of my brand deck, which is what you present to people who are interested in licensing your artwork. And that's the cover of it. This next one here is some artwork from a booth that I created for Surtex, which is a major trade show, a national trade show. And a lot of retailers are there and manufacturers who might be interested in licensing my artwork. And so I have a tagline that I use, there's so much goodness in store. And the reason why I use that is goodness is because all my artwork is very uplifting and positive and motivating. And the idea that it's in store, meaning it's coming up and it's in the future, and also in store, meaning retailers. how to get people in retail. So that's how I've used taglines to reinforce my personal brand. So I'd really encourage you to work on that and think about that yourself. Like how would you describe your artwork in a very simple statement of, 6 words or less? How will people understand who you are and what your brand promise is?
Kat, I did drop your website and your Instagram into the chat.
Okay, good.
So those are for everybody. And then with our last 3 minutes, if anybody wants to unmute and ask Kat any questions, or if you want to drop any questions in the chat, I'm happy to read them. Paula wrote, I'm looking at your website and really love your art. Are you located in the Green Bay area?
I'm actually in Appleton. Yes. So, but my art is, I don't have a retail location. So it's mostly licensed to manufacturers that sell like everywhere. And I also produce books, and they're available out there on Amazon and some other places.
I'm just going to unmute and let you see me in my bedroom. But so I'm really wanting to connect. Since you're in Appleton, can I just connect with you on your website? Or...
Yes, or Instagram. Instagram's a great way to connect.
I'm not an artist. I'm not an artist,
okay.
But I'm starting a business that involves art, which is kind of why I'd like to reach out to you. So,
well, absolutely. And who you should really also reach out to is Carrie. She's a great connector. Okay. She knows everybody in the art world in the area. So well, Paula, I would highly recommend you connect up with Carrie too.
Specifically, my business is, because I'm a therapist, so I'm mental health, but I want to start doing classes where I'm incorporating self-discovery, self-healing, and self-expression. A lot like what this whole talk was about, except not just with art, with your whole life, basically, but using art as one of the tools. So yeah, I will. I just want to reach out because I just looked at your art and it was like resonating like all over. So yeah.
Amazing. Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. That gives me chills, because that's exactly where I'm in my authentic purpose when you say that, because I want to go in that general direction. So
you're definitely in it. You're definitely in it.
Thank you. Thank you. I appreciate that. I should also mention really quick, for some of you who don't know this about Carrie, she is also a very accomplished artist. I bought this. Look at this beauty. So she knows what she's talking about when she's also giving advice to you artists. She's amazing herself.
Thank you.
Thank you guys for being here and listening and participating. I really appreciate it. It makes me feel really good. And anytime any of you want to reach out, I'm always available.
Thank you so much. This was wonderful. That's exactly what I needed to end my day. It was great. I made notes. I even drew the little, I think I have a printout of it, but I drew a picture of it.
Oh yeah.
I really should do that. I should sit down and do some more of these activities. So I appreciate
Seriously, it's worth it. It's worth the insight that you gain from it. It can be really cool as you connect dots. And you're like, I never knew how I could connect what I do for a living right now with this thing that I thought could only be like this volunteer or this hobby that I did. But oh my God, there's actually a way I can meld the two and make a living at it. It's really kind of cool when you realize that there are a million ways in which you can make a living. Just got to think creatively. And yeah, so that authentic purpose worksheet is really handy for that. So
I always leave our chats so inspired. So thank you very much, Kat. Have a good night, everybody.
Thank you.
This down and
Thank you, everyone.
Posted. Thank you.
Have a wonderful night.
You too.